Hey, I'm Cori and I'm a yoga instructor in Los Angeles. This video is part of a series for my final project of a 300-hour teacher training with YogaWorks. One of the first group yoga classes I ever taught was about 3 years ago when I went on a family trip with my boyfriend at the time. I was excited to show off my new skills, so we agreed that I would teach a class to the whole family, which was about 20 people over Thanksgiving week. I'd been practicing yoga for a number of years. However, I found that I didn't yet have the teaching skills necessary to adapt my sequences to all types of bodies. My ex-boyfriend's sister, Amy Lee, had a total colectomy, or a removal of her large intestine, a few years earlier, and now she has a colostomy bag. I tried to modify the sequence and the poses to fit her needs, but it ended up not working out well. She left feeling discouraged, and I felt like I had failed as a teacher. So I've always wanted to go back and reteach a class that would be more appropriate for all bodies and make everyone feel welcome in yoga. Flash forward 3 years later, now that I'm doing a 300-hour training and a final project for that, I wanted to focus on yoga for ostomates. I decided to make a series of videos for people with ostomies so that others, like Amy Lee, could feel comfortable either practicing yoga via the video on their own at home or going to a public class and modifying safely so that they have a way to practice yoga. But first, Amy Lee will share her own story and how yoga has impacted life for her.
Hi, my name is Amy Lee, and I'm going to share with you my experience as an ostomate and practicing yoga. So I am 39, almost 39, and I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 20. Crohn's disease is an inflammatory bowel disease, and it comes on a pretty wide spectrum of severity. So my disease was kind of the most severe. It didn't really respond to any type of dietary changes or medications. So when I was 22, I actually had a temporary ileostomy. And an ileostomy is when the doctors do a surgery where they take your small intestine and they cut a hole in your abdominal wall and put the end of the small intestine through it so the contents of your bowels can empty into a pouch. That's called an ostomy pouch. So I had the temporary ileostomy for a couple years, and then I was able to get it reversed, but that only lasted for a period of about 8 years. And then when I was 30, I had a permanent ileostomy because my disease was so severe I wasn't able to eat food by mouth, and I had to be fed through a tube, and it was just no quality of life, and I was really, really sick. So here I am, 7 surgeries later, and I really didn't get a whole lot of guidance other than, how to take care of the pouch, but I didn't get a lot of guidance about how to kind of navigate my new structure of my abdomen. I was told specifically not to do crunches, that could cause a hernia because the intestine, there's a hole in the abdominal wall and the intestine was coming through. So, for the first few years after my surgery, I did not do any type of abdominal work. And it was only until recently when a surgeon told me that she thought that yoga would actually help me by stretching the adhesions that have formed in my abdomen from the 7 surgeries, and also help me strengthen my core muscles to support the ileostomy, the stoma. That's what you call the intestine that comes through the wall. So I was really excited to try, and it's been really amazing for me. I've been practicing 3 times a week for about 4 to 5 months now, and I've noticed a really much improvement. I mean, I'm having less lower back pain. I had chronic back pain because, I've had such weak abdominal muscles, and I've noticed a big improvement in my abdominal strength. I've also, noticed less tightness with my adhesions, and I'm getting to be a lot better at biofeedback and mindfulness and different relaxation techniques from my practice. Anyway, yeah, I'm just really excited that I have this practice to continue for the rest of my life, because the situation that I have is permanent, and, I'm going to have to be dealing with this forever. And so I just feel so fortunate to have found yoga to help me manage the symptoms of my disease and the ileostomy. Thanks so much.
There are so many benefits to developing a yoga practice, especially for ostomates. Yoga can help you increase your strength, improve flexibility, and it can also be a low-impact way to get back into exercise after an operation with your doctor's approval, or if you just haven't been exercising in a while. And specifically for ostomates who have been advised not to practice crunches or direct abdominal exercises because of the risk of abdominal hernias, yoga can be a great way to build core stability without doing crunches. In fact, one of Amy Lee's doctors actually specifically recommended that she practice yoga because it would build up the stability and muscles in her abdominal walls that hold her appliance in place. And in addition, yoga can be a way to celebrate your body for making it through a struggle with illness, overcoming a major operation, and just a good way to begin to reconnect with yourself and cultivate an appreciation for all that your body can do, which usually often overpowers anything that it cannot do. One big disclaimer: I worked with Amy Lee and conducted research online to develop these sequences and the tips in the video. I don't personally know what it's like to be an ostomate, nor do I know what it's like to live in your body. And on top of that, your body is different from one day to the next. It's different every day. So of course, if you ever have any tips or suggestions for me, I would love to hear them. But a big part of yoga is learning to quiet your mind, listen to your body, and start to accept yourself exactly as you are. You should always get permission from your doctor before beginning a new form of exercise. And there are a few specific risk factors for people with ostomies when practicing yoga. Direct abdominal exercises like crunches and deep twists should be avoided because of the risk of hernias. You should stop practicing if you feel any pain in the abdomen, and that goes with any pain in general as you're getting started. If something doesn't feel good, stop. Ostomates are also at an increased risk of dehydration, so you should keep a water bottle nearby when you practice, and you probably want to avoid hot yoga classes. Some of the tips I learned during my research and from Amy Lee are that you probably don't want to eat a meal directly before practicing, and you should empty your bag before attending class or practicing on your own. You might like to wear high-waisted pants or form-fitting clothing, or even a stealth belt or a maternity band to hold your bag in place. Just like every body is different, every individual and personality practicing yoga is different. Some of you will feel comfortable doing every single pose in a fast-paced class. Some of you will enjoy more gentle, restorative practice. Some of you might like to lie on your stomach. Some of you won't. And this might be different every day. I know for Amy Lee, she prefers doing exercises on one side, and sometimes it's a little more uncomfortable on the side where her stoma is located. The more you practice yoga and the more you learn about the practice, you'll find out what works for you and what doesn't, and know that you can always skip, modify, or stop altogether in any of the poses if it doesn't feel good or if you're in pain. It doesn't matter what I say or what any other teacher says, that you should be able to adapt the practice to your needs, and you can always pull the teacher aside and let them know that you won't be doing every pose because you've recently had abdominal surgery, or whatever information you feel comfortable sharing. Know that your practice is for you and you can change it to make it work. We'll get started with some basic yoga poses. I've also posted a full class sequence and a more gentle chair yoga sequence that you might find to be better for you. I'll always start my classes or my own practice with a little bit of meditation or simply connecting with the breath, and that can be seated or lying down. I'm seated here on a couple blocks, which are a nice investment if you have them, or you can just use a pillow or a blanket from around your house. And as you go throughout your practice, or if you're in a class, know that using props isn't a sign of weakness or inability to do something. It's actually a sign of intelligence, that you know how to use the right tools to help your body feel more comfortable and open up. But it's a great idea to take just a few moments at the beginning of your practice to connect with yourself, check in with the way you're breathing and the way that you're feeling. And simply by doing that, you're already doing yoga, so you don't have to do anything else. Just sit here, be with yourself and breathe, and you've already started to practice. But we'll start to move on to hands and knees so that I can show a few core exercises that are good for building stability in the abdominals without having to do actual crunches. We'll come into a tabletop position and set up right on your hands and knees. And then really actually draw your belly in towards your spine, so you don't want to have a lot of dumping into your low back. And then to start to engage the abdominals, we'll stretch the right heel out back behind you and reach the left arm forward. And here thinking about hugging everything into your center, so you already feel your belly starting to activate. On your exhale, you'll set your hand and knee down. As you inhale, stretch the arm and the leg long on the other side. And it's like you're reaching out to shake someone's hand in the front. And this is a great way to build the core stabilizing muscles both around the spine and in the midline of the body, without having to directly engage through the abdominals. And as you start to feel more comfortable with the opposite arm and leg extending, you might like to bring yourself more into a plank pose, and you could do that on your knees by walking the hands a little bit forward or the knees back, and toes can be tucked under or untucked. And you'll start to bring your hips more into alignment with the knees and the shoulders. Keep the belly hugging in and the chest nice and open. If you wanted to add on, you could tuck the toes under and start to lift up through the knees, bringing a little bit more of the power into your legs and still feeling that engagement around the core. Another helpful core exercise can be forearm plank, which is the same set of engagement, but you'll be down on your elbows. And just holding it here, anywhere from about 10 to 45 seconds or even for a whole minute. And another great way to work the abdominal muscles without doing crunches is by doing alternating leg lifts or leg lifts right down the center. So you would come to lie down on your back and extend the legs right up over the hips, and knees can be bent or straight, whatever you're comfortable with. You'll press the hands down by your sides and try to keep your hips on the ground and your sacrum on the ground. You might even feel a little bit of a natural curve of your lower back. So it's like that triangular set of vertebrae right above your butt is pressing down into the ground, and then right above it, there's a little bit of a curve in your low back. And then on your inhale, you'll extend the right leg anywhere from halfway down to all the way to a hover. And then exhale to draw it back up. And then you'll switch over to the left side. Inhale, lower to any amount. And exhale to lift up through the center. And then you'll just start to alternate between sides. And it doesn't have to be a big movement. Halfway down is fine. And if you have been doing this for a while and you're looking for more of a challenge, you could lower both legs at the same time on your inhale. Exhale to draw them back up through center. And again, it can be anywhere from halfway down to all the way to a hover. But you want to think about maintaining that natural curve in your low back so you're not getting a lot of extra arch or pressing the low back into the floor. If you do wind up going to a public yoga class or practicing a yoga YouTube video or practicing on your own, chances are you're going to end up doing some form of ascent salutation. So I'll show you a version that's modified where you don't have to come down onto your belly or stress out the abdominal region. You'll always start in mountain pose, Tadasana, with your feet planted firmly down into the floor, the crown of your head reaching high. You'll use an inhale breath to reach your arms out and up overhead, palms could touch at the top. And exhale to hinge at your hips, coming down into a forward fold. And you could have your hands on blocks here if you like. Inhale, you'll rise up, hands into your blocks or on your shins, stretch the crown of the head forward. And then as you exhale, you bend your knees, plant the hands, and step back into a plank pose. And then you could lower the knees down. Use an inhale to reach your heart open And here the rest of the class might be down on your belly, but you don't have to go there. And on your exhale, tuck your toes under, press your hips up and back to come back to your downward facing dog. And you'll take a couple breaths here to reset. And then you'd use an inhale to rise up to the balls of your feet, bend your knees as you walk your feet all the way up to the top of your mat. And if you have your hands on blocks here, you'd have a little bit more space. And press your hands into your shins, reach the crown of your head forward. Exhale back down into your fold. And then press through the feet, reach the arms out to the sides and up as you rise up to standing. And your exhale breath takes you back into mountain pose. If you find that there's a time when the class comes down onto their belly and they're doing heart openers, resting on their stomachs, Amy Lee likes to come into Sphinx pose. So you would rest on your forearms with the tops of the thighs down, and you're hugging your abdominals in, reaching your heart forward, so your belly doesn't really have to be on the floor. And you're creating space for yourself, pressing down to the tops of your feet, tops of your thighs, maybe your hip bones, and then through your forearms, your wrists, and your palms. And then another good back bend if everyone's on their belly and they're doing their own thing and you want to be able to open your heart but not get all the way down there. You can come into camel pose with your toes tucked under, your knees about hips distance apart, hips stacked right over your knees. And I like to use blocks alongside the ankles just to bring the floor a little closer towards you. And I like to come into it by bringing the hands to the low back with the fingers pointing down like you're wearing jeans and you have hands in your pockets. And then start to roll the shoulders onto the back, open across your chest. Imagine like someone has a string lifting from the center of your heart all the way up to the sky. You could stay here with hands on your hips supporting your low back, or you might bring the hands behind you onto your blocks or even onto your heels. And just feel the front of the body open for a few breaths. If it's easy, you could gaze up at the ceiling, and maybe the head could drop back. When you're ready to come out, you'll firm into the belly. Imagine like someone has a string still drawing you up towards the sky. I like to bring my hands to support the low back and draw up out of the waist. And then sit your hips back onto your heels to take a couple breaths here. And Amy Lee doesn't like to practice pigeon pose upright because the way that the knee bends and the hip pulls back gets in the way of her bag. So she prefers to practice reclined pigeon, a nice hip opener. And she comes to lying down with the knees pointing up to the sky. You would cross your right ankle over the left knee and flex into the right foot. Reach down, one hand goes in between the legs, one hand wraps around the outside. And then just gently draw the knees into your chest. And if that's too much, you can always just leave the foot on the floor and start to press the ankle into the knee and reach the right thigh away from you. And when you're finished, you would uncross the ankle, switch over to the other side. And the leg that's crossed over, you just want to keep flexing into that foot to protect the knee joint, especially as you're pressing the knee away from you. So I hope this video helped you find some basic yoga poses and tips for beginning a practice or going to a public class and modifying their sequence to fit with your body. As I said, I'm always welcome to any feedback or suggestions. I've also posted a yoga sequence specifically for people with ostomies and a more gentle chair yoga sequence in case you're closer to just having had your operation or you just don't feel comfortable doing a sequence down on the mat. So check them out, let me know what you think, and wishing you all the best on your path to yoga. Thank you for watching. Namaste.